Hey there, and welcome. Today, we're going to be architects for a day. We're diving deep into the invisible blueprint that holds our entire world together, exploring the fundamental concepts that shape every single human society. Let's get right into it. So, let's kick things off with a pretty big question. What are the invisible rules that run our world? Just like a massive skyscraper has a detailed blueprint that dictates its shape and how it works, every society is built on a set of unspoken underlying principles. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain and take a look at that very blueprint. All right, first things first. We have to understand the core building blocks. Think of these as the load-bearing walls and the steel support beams of any society, the stuff that gives it structure and keeps it from falling apart. At the absolute heart of it all are what sociologists call social institutions. Now, don't think of these as physical buildings. Think of them more like the essential operating systems for society. They're the organized systems that provide structure, keep things running smoothly, and, this is the really crucial part, pass on a society's core values from one generation to the next. And what's so cool here is how familiar these are, right? You interact with them every single day. The family is where we learn our very first social rules. Education gets us ready for our roles in the wider world. Government sets the laws we live by. And for a lot of people, religion provides a moral compass. They are, quite literally, the bedrock of our collective lives. So if you think of those institutions as the hardware of society, then cultural values, well, they're the software running on it. These are the shared beliefs, the stories we tell, the traditions we keep, and all the little practices that make a group of people feel like a we. It's what creates that powerful sense of identity and belonging. Exactly. These values are like the silent navigators for our behavior. They tell us what's right, what's wrong, what's important, and what's worth fighting for. And it's this shared understanding that turns a random crowd of people into a real, cohesive community. But of course, societies aren't static things sitting in a museum. No way. They are living, breathing organisms that are constantly changing and evolving. So in this next part, let's look at the dynamic forces that actually cause all that change to happen. So how does this change actually happen? Well, for the most part, it boils down to these three key processes: adaptation, diffusion, and exchange. Let's break each one down. Okay, first up, adaptation. You can think of this as a society's problem-solving mechanism. When it's faced with a new challenge, maybe it's a changing climate or a huge economic shift like moving from farming to factories, a society has to adapt its behaviors, its tools, and its structures just to survive and hopefully thrive. Next, we have diffusion. This is basically how ideas go viral across the globe. Think about the spread of democratic ideals or how fast a new smartphone model shows up in pretty much every corner of the world. An idea or a cool piece of tech starts in one place, but it definitely doesn't stay there for long. And finally, there's exchange. Now, while diffusion can sometimes be a one-way street, exchange is all about a mutual back-and-forth interaction. A great historical example is the Silk Road, right? Goods, philosophies, technologies, they all traveled in both directions. This is how cultures really start to blend and create totally new traditions, new foods, you name it. So when you take all these forces, adaptation, diffusion, and exchange, and you mix them all together over centuries, you end up with the world that most of us live in today, a world that's defined by what sociologists call pluralistic societies. So what does that big term actually mean? Well, a pluralistic society is simply one where lots of different ethnic, religious, or cultural groups all live together. But here's the key. These groups get to keep their unique identities while also participating in a larger shared system. It's a really delicate balancing act. And that balancing act means that this kind of diversity is, well, it's like a two-sided coin. It presents us with some absolutely incredible opportunities, but also some very, very real challenges. This slide captures that paradox perfectly. On the one hand, diversity is an incredible engine for innovation. When you bring people with different backgrounds together, you get amazing new solutions. And it massively enriches our culture with new food, new art, new music, and it can help us build real empathy. But on the other side of that coin, it can also lead to social friction. It can create prejudice and, in the worst cases, it can lead to conflict as different groups try to navigate that shared space. Okay, so after looking at all these big concepts, we have to ask the big so what question. Why does understanding any of this stuff, this framework, actually matter in the real world? This quote from our source material just nails it. The goal isn't just to memorize these terms for a test.
It's to use them as tools, tools that help us genuinely appreciate the richness of cultural diversity while also being really clear-eyed and honest about the challenges that pop up when different worldviews bump into each other.
And really, this is the ultimate payoff. Understanding this blueprint gives all of us, especially students, the essential skills for the world we live in. It helps us see how and why societies change, to really appreciate what diversity brings to the table, to analyze tough social problems without knee-jerk reactions, and ultimately to be more effective and empathetic citizens in this super complex, interconnected world of ours.
So I'll leave you with a final thought to chew on. As our world gets more and more tangled together every single day, which of these forces do you think will define our future the most? Will it be adaptation, diffusion, or exchange? What do you think our future blueprint is going to look like?